I worked the night shift at a small hotel off the interstate in northern Ohio. It wasn't a nice hotel. It was the kind of place people used when they were too tired to keep driving. 3 floors, old carpet, dim hallways, and vending machines that barely worked. Most nights were quiet. A few late check-ins, some bad coffee, security cameras, then sunrise. But one night, a little after midnight, a man walked into the lobby and changed the way I looked at hotels forever. He wore a dark jacket and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. He didn't seem drunk or scared. He seemed calm. Too calm. He walked up to the desk and said, "I need a room." I asked for his ID and credit card. His name was Mark Ellis. I checked him into room 217 on the 2nd floor near the end of the hallway. Before he went upstairs, he asked, "Is anyone in 219? I checked the computer. Room 219 was empty. I told him no. He nodded, took his key cards, and walked to the elevator. At the time, I thought it was just a strange question. About 40 minutes later, the phone rang. Room 217. I answered, "Front desk, how can I help you?" For a few seconds, there was only breathing. Then Mark said, "There's someone in the room next to mine." I looked at the system again. Room 219 was still vacant. I told him no one was checked into that room. He said, "I can hear someone moving." I told him it was probably the pipes or noise from another floor. He replied, "It's not pipes." Then he hung up. 10 minutes later, the elevator opened. Mark walked back into the lobby and came straight to the desk. "I need a key to 219, he said. I told him I couldn't give him access to another room. He leaned closer and said, "Then you need to open it." I checked the cameras. The 2nd floor hallway was empty. I rewound the footage. Mark had gone into room 217 at 12:26 a.m. After that, nobody entered the hallway. Not from the elevator. Not from either stairwell. Nobody. I was about to tell him there was nothing there when he pointed at the monitor. "Go back." I rewound a few seconds. At first, I didn't see anything. Then I saw it. The handle on room 219 moved. Slowly down, then back up. But the hallway outside the room was empty. If the handle moved, it had moved from inside. I grabbed the master key card and told Mark to stay in the lobby. He didn't. He followed me into the elevator without saying a word. When we reached the 2nd floor, the hallway was silent. Room 217 was at the end. Room 219 was right beside it. As we got closer, I stopped. The privacy latch on room 219 was locked. That little metal bar across the door. The kind you can only lock from inside the room. Mark whispered, "I told you." I knocked. Front desk. No answer. I knocked again. Hotel staff, is anyone inside? Nothing. I used the master key. The lock turned green. I pushed the door open. It moved about 2 inches, then stopped against the latch. A smell came through the gap. Sweat. Old clothes. Something sour. I stepped back. Then we both heard it. A scraping sound from inside the room. Like furniture being dragged across carpet. Mark moved closer to the door. I grabbed his arm and told him to stop. That was when he said, very quietly, "That's him." I looked at him. "What do you mean, him?" He didn't answer. He just stared at the door. I went downstairs and called 911. While we waited, Mark stood near the lobby windows, watching the parking lot. He didn't sit. He didn't pace. He didn't look at his phone. He just watched. The police arrived about 12 minutes later. I explained everything. Vacant room. Latch locked from inside. Movement on camera. Noise behind the door. 2 officers went upstairs with me. This time, they made Mark stay in the lobby. At room 219, 1 officer knocked. No response. Then they forced the door past the latch. I stayed in the hallway. For a few seconds, there was silence. Then 1 officer said, "What the hell?" The room was empty. No person. No luggage. No sign that anyone had been staying there. But the bathroom ceiling vent was open. The cover was hanging by 1 screw. 1 officer shined his flashlight up into it and immediately told us to step back. There was a crawl space above the rooms. Small, dusty, narrow, but large enough for a person to move through. And there were fresh footprints in the dust. The police searched the entire hotel. They found access panels above several rooms, even above a supply closet. But they didn't find the person. Then 1 officer checked the 3rd floor stairwell. Behind the door, hidden in the corner, they found a backpack. Inside were gloves, a flashlight, a screwdriver, several stolen hotel key cards, and a small notebook. The notebook had room numbers written inside. Dates, times, descriptions of guests. Woman alone, 312. Family with kids, 108. Man drunk, 224. Then they found 1 page that was different. It had Mark's name. Mark Ellis. Room 217. Underneath it, 1 sentence was written. He found me again. That was when the police questioned Mark. I wasn't supposed to hear it, but the office door was partly open. Mark told them his younger sister had disappeared from a motel 6 months earlier. No forced entry. No signs of struggle. No footage of her leaving. She was just gone. The police thought she had left on her own. Mark never believed that. He had been traveling along the interstate for weeks, staying in cheap hotels, checking rooms, watching hallways, looking for whoever he believed had taken her. Everyone thought he was paranoid. Until that night. The man in the crawl space was never found. But police recovered items from the backpack that belonged to missing guests from multiple hotels. One of them was a bracelet. Mark identified it as his sister. I quit 2 weeks later. Management called it a security incident. But I still remember what Mark said before he left. He came to the desk, asked for a piece of paper, and wrote down 1 number. Then he slid it toward me and said, "He always stays next to the room he's watching." I only checked into that hotel because of the storm. I was driving home from a work conference in Kentucky when the rain got so heavy I could barely see the road. My GPS said I still had almost 3 hours left, but after my car slid twice in 10 minutes, I decided to stop. The nearest hotel was a 4-story building beside a gas station. It didn't look nice, but it looked dry. That was enough. I walked into the lobby a little after 11 p.m., soaked from the rain, carrying only my backpack. The man at the front desk looked half asleep. He barely looked at me before saying, "One night." I nodded. He took my ID, typed something into the computer, and handed me a key card. "Room 312, he said, "elevator on the left." I thanked him and started toward the elevator. Before I reached it, he said, "Ice machine on 3 doesn't work." I turned back. Okay. He stared at me for a second too long, then looked back at his screen. My room was at the end of the 3rd floor hallway. The hotel smelled like wet carpet and old cigarettes covered with cleaning spray. Room 312 was basic. A bed, a small TV, 2 lamps, and a connecting door on the wall beside the dresser. I hate connecting doors in hotel rooms, but I was too tired to care. I changed out of my wet clothes, plugged in my phone, and got into bed. For a while, all I heard was rain hitting the window. Then I heard crying. At first, I thought it was the wind. But then it came again. A woman. Sobbed. Broken. Trying not to be heard. It was coming from the room next to mine. Room 314. I sat up and listened. People cry in hotels, couples fight, families get bad news. I told myself not to overreact. Then I heard her whisper, "Please." I got out of bed and walked to the connecting door. The crying continued. Then the voice came again. "Please help me." I froze. I stood beside the door and said, "Are you okay?" The crying stopped instantly. For a few seconds, there was only silence. Then the woman whispered, "Don't let him hear you." My stomach dropped. I grabbed my phone and called the front desk. The same man answered. I told him there was a woman crying in the room next to mine and that she sounded like she needed help. He paused, then asked, "What room are you in?" 312. Another pause. Then he said, "There's nobody in 314. I looked at the connecting door. "I can hear her." "That room is empty," he said. "It's out of service." Out of service. That made everything feel worse. I told him again that someone was in there. He sighed. "Stay in your room, I'll check." Then he hung up. For several minutes, there was nothing but rain. Then someone knocked on my door. 3 slow knocks. A man's voice came from the hallway. "Front desk." I moved toward the door, but didn't open it. Through the peephole, I saw a man standing outside. But it wasn't the clerk. This man was taller. He wore a black rain jacket with the hood pulled up, and his face was angled down. He knocked again. "Sir, open the door." I backed away. Then the woman behind the connecting door whispered, "Don't." I called the front desk again. The clerk answered. I whispered, "Is someone from the desk at my door?" He said no. My mouth went dry. The man outside was still standing there. I told the clerk someone was at my door, claiming to be hotel staff. This time his voice changed. "Lock your door. It is locked. Use the latch." I looked at the door. The latch was already closed. Then he said, "I'm calling the police." The line went dead. For a few seconds, everything was silent. Then I heard a beep. The key card reader on my door. The handle moved. Once, twice. The card didn't work. He tried again. Beep. Handle. Nothing. I pushed the chair from the corner under the handle, even though I knew it wouldn't stop anyone. Then the man leaned close to the door and said, "I know you heard her." Then he walked away. A few seconds later, I heard another beep. Not at my door. The next room. 314. The door opened. The woman gasped. Then something hit the wall hard enough to shake the lamp beside my bed. I called 911. While I was talking to the dispatcher, the sounds stopped. No crying. No footsteps. No voices. Just rain. The police arrived less than 10 minutes later. I made them show their badges through the peephole before I opened the door. 2 officers checked my room first. Then they went to room 314. The door was locked. The front desk clerk gave them a master key. The light turned green. The door opened. The room was empty. No woman. No man. No luggage. But something was wrong. The mattress had been moved slightly away from the wall. The carpet near the connecting door was scratched. And on the nightstand, there was a cheap prepaid phone. One officer picked it up. The screen was cracked. An audio file was open. The file name was Crying 3 MP3. The officer played 1 second of it. A woman's sobbing filled the room. The same crying I had heard through the wall. My skin went cold. It had been a recording, but not all of it. Because when I asked if she was okay, someone had answered me. That whisper was real. The police searched the room again. Behind the curtain, they found a black backpack. Inside were gloves, duct tape, a folding knife, several hotel key cards, and 2 more prepaid phones. One phone had photos on it. Photos of hotel hallways, room doors, guests walking alone. Some were of me. One from the lobby. One in the hallway. One while I was unlocking room 312. The man in the rain jacket was never caught. Security footage showed him entering through a side door at 10:42 p.m. with a working key card. Nobody knew where he got it. He left through a stairwell 2 minutes before police arrived. No clear face. No license plate. Nothing. The worst part was one of the audio files on the phone. Most were recordings of crying, whispering, and women asking for help. But one file hadn't been played yet. It was named 312 Next. That was my room. I checked out before sunrise and drove home in the rain. I never got a refund. I didn't care. Ever since that night, I don't stay in hotel rooms with connecting doors. And if I ever hear someone crying through a wall, I don't get closer to listen. I call the police first. Because sometimes the person asking for help isn't the victim. Sometimes they're the bait. I booked the hotel because I had an early flight. My flight was at 6:10 a.m. and the airport was almost 2 hours from my house. Instead of driving in the middle of the night, I decided to stay at a hotel nearby. It was a normal airport hotel. Clean lobby. Bright lights. People with suitcases. Nothing creepy. I checked in around 9 p.m. The woman at the front desk handed me a key card and said, "Room 611, 6th floor, end of the hall." I never liked rooms at the end of hallways. But it was only one night, so I didn't say anything. The room was normal. King bed. Desk. TV. Small coffee machine. The window looked out over the parking lot and the runway lights in the distance. I set my alarm for 3:45 a.m., took a shower, packed my clothes for the morning, and went to bed. At 1:17 a.m., I woke up. Not because of a loud noise. Because of a quiet one. A slow dragging sound in the hallway. At first, I thought it was someone pulling luggage. Airport hotels are like that, people leave at all hours. But the sound stopped directly outside my room. I opened my eyes and listened. For a few seconds, there was nothing. Then I heard breathing. Steady breathing. Right outside my door. I sat up. The room was dark except for the red numbers on the alarm clock. 1:18 a.m. I got out of bed and walked quietly to the door. The deadbolt was locked. The safety latch was on. I looked through the peephole. At first, the hallway looked empty. Then I saw him. A man standing near the end of the hall, close to the ice machine. He wore dark pants and a grey hoodie. His hands were at his sides. His head was slightly lowered. But he was facing my room. Completely still. I stepped back. I told myself he was probably drunk. Maybe he had the wrong floor. Maybe he was waiting for someone. Then he took one slow step forward. Then another. Not like a normal person walking. More like he didn't want me to notice him moving. I grabbed my phone and called the front desk. A man answered. I whispered, "There's someone standing outside my room." He asked for my room number. 611. There was a pause. Then he said, "Don't open the door." That was when I knew something was wrong. I asked him to send security. He said, "Stay inside, I'm calling them now." I looked through the peephole again. The man was closer. Only a few doors away now. Still facing my room. Still silent. Then he stepped out of view. For 1 second, I thought he had left. Then the peephole went black. Something was covering it from the outside. I froze. A voice whispered through the door. "I know you're awake." I backed away until I hit the bed. The handle moved. Slowly. Once. Then again. The deadbolt held. The latch held. I called 911. While I was talking to the dispatcher, the room phone rang. I almost dropped my cell. I answered it. The front desk clerk said, "Security is on the 6th floor. Stay away from the door." I didn't respond. Because the man outside whispered again. Very softly. "Don't talk to them." A minute later, I heard footsteps rushing down the hallway. Someone shouted, "Hotel security." The peephole cleared. I looked through it. 2 security guards were outside my room. The man in the hoodie was gone. I opened the door only after they showed their badges. 1 guard stayed with me. The other checked the hallway. I asked if they saw the man. The guard nodded. Only for a second. When they came out of the elevator, they saw someone standing directly in front of my door. The moment they called out, he ran toward the stairwell. They chased him down 2 floors, then lost him. Police arrived a few minutes later. They searched the stairwells, the lobby, the parking lot, and the floors below mine. They found nothing. Then one of the officers asked to see the security footage. That was when everything got worse. The cameras showed me checking in at 9:04 p.m. They showed me getting off the elevator on the 6th floor. But after that, nobody else came onto the floor. Not from the elevator. Not from the stairwell. Nobody. The man in the hoodie had never entered the 6th floor. At least not on camera. Then one security guard remembered something. There was a housekeeping closet near the end of the hall. Right across from the ice machine. Right where I first saw the man standing. The police opened it. Inside, they found a folded blanket, empty water bottles, snack wrappers, a flashlight, and a hotel staff key card. There was also a small notebook. On the first page were room numbers, dates, times, short notes. 604, couple, asleep by midnight. 609, woman alone, leaves early. 611, man alone, early flight. That was my room. Under it, another line was written. Awake at 1:18. I felt sick. The man hadn't randomly walked up to my door. He had been watching from inside the housekeeping closet. The police searched the closet again and found a tiny hole drilled through the wall. It didn't look into any room. It looked into the hallway, enough to see who was alone, who left their room, who came back, who locked their door. Behind a stack of towels, they found a stolen front desk radio. That meant he had been listening to staff conversations. He knew when security was coming. He knew which rooms were occupied. He knew who was alone. The hotel manager later admitted several guests had complained over the past month. Someone standing near their doors. Strange sounds in the hallway. Key cards going missing. But nothing was ever clear on camera, so they assumed it was drunk guests or staff mistakes. The man was not found that night. I changed rooms, but I didn't sleep. At 4 a.m., I checked out and waited for the airport shuttle in the lobby while 2 police officers were still there. A week later, an officer called me. They had traced the staff key card. It belonged to a former maintenance worker who had been fired almost 2 months earlier. Nobody knew how he still had access. Nobody knew how many nights he had been hiding inside that closet. But the worst part was what they found on a small voice recorder behind the pipes. Most of it was just hallway noise. Doors opening. Elevators. Suitcases rolling. People talking. But one recording was from outside my room. You could hear me whispering to the front desk. You could hear the man breathing outside my door. And right before security arrived, he whispered something I hadn't heard that night. He said, "Next time, wait until he opens it."